The topic today is how to always know the right sales questions to ask. The reason why we've picked this topic today is one of our core beliefs is that the best salesperson is the one that asks the best questions. And I think most people, if they're in sales or a business owner, they certainly want to be the best salesperson. And I think what we often fall into is trying to think about the best way to describe our product or talk about our product. And we think that if we can sort of figure out the right mixture of things to say there, that and the right charm and the right personality traits, that we might find a way to become the best salesperson. But I believe that the key to that is just asking good questions. And I'm gonna make my case to you with a few slides of why I believe that. But before I do that, I actually want to just kind of share with you where that thought comes from. And yes, I'm with a company called Sales Scripter, and we provide training and tools around asking good questions, and you're going to see a lot of that here today. So certainly that's part of our product and service. But where this comes from for me personally, it is that it actually goes to the first real sales job that I had, where I was selling software, and I worked in sort of an inside sales role, and was on the phone doing warm calls, cold calls, and I would get a prospect on the phone, and I would have what I would think was a good conversation, and then right when it would end, I'd go into my manager's office all excited to talk about it. And I guess the conversation was maybe okay, but when telling my manager about it, he would say, well, do they have budget to spend? And I would sit there realizing I didn't ask that. I didn't ask, do they have budget to spend? And I would feel like, well, that was a good question. That would have been a good question to ask, and I didn't ask it. And I would kind of walk out of the office with my tail between my legs, realizing, well, maybe it's not such a great lead because I don't know if they have money to spend. And then that process would happen again, where I'd have another call, and I'd go run into my manager's office telling him about the lead I created, and he would ask me, well, are they the decision maker, the person you're talking to? And I would realize, well, I didn't really ask that, and then I would leave again. And so going through that process, I realized a couple things. One is I wasn't asking the right questions. Also, why was my manager not, he obviously knew the questions I needed to ask, because he would come in, he would tell them to me or press me on them, after the fact. Why didn't he just teach me about the right questions to ask? And the other thing I realized after going through this and really learning through trial and error, which by the way is extremely expensive in terms of lost opportunities and the amount of time it takes, but I realized that it's pretty easy to create a list of the questions that you need to ask. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It doesn't on a piece of paper. It doesn't take up a lot of space in your brain. And so that's what I started to do on my own, and I actually ended up creating a spreadsheet of questions that I needed to ask in different situations. And this was 15 years ago, and I actually ended up sharing that spreadsheet with my peers on my team, and it was actually kind of exciting when they would come to me and ask for the latest version of the spreadsheet. Now that I look back, that's technically probably the first version of Sales Scripter. It's not really a straight line from that to me creating Sales Scripter, but that's where all this comes from. Let me explain to you why I think that asking good questions is so important or helpful to you. And one is that if you ask good questions, you're going to make a good impression with your prospect because it's a little bit more professional. Think about the salesperson that talks about their product, and then the other person who asks good questions, thought-provoking questions. It will make you appear more sophisticated, even if you're not. A little side note, one of the first companies I started was a cold call outsourcing business where I hired work-at-home agents to do cold calling. And one trick that I used was I would teach them what questions to ask, and because it's real easy to teach someone a few questions to ask versus teaching someone how to explain something in detail. And these work-at-home agents would make a really good impression because they would sound really sophisticated because they were asking good questions. So it's one way to start out on the right foot with your prospect. The other thing about asking questions, and especially if we're replacing you just showing up and throwing up and talking about your product, if you replace that with asking questions instead, well, you're going to extract valuable information from the prospect. You're going to get them talking, and every question you ask, if they're decent questions, you should end up with more information, and that should help you in all sorts of ways. Questions are a great way to start conversations, whether you're making cold calls, whether you're talking to someone at a networking event. Instead of just talking about you and your company, if you ask questions, it's a good way to start conversations. And probably the best setting to explain that is when you're cold calling. I've received a lot of cold calls from salespeople, and they want to talk to me about their product. Well, instead of them talking at me, really, you can ask questions, and that gets me talking, and it stands more to get someone engaged. It can also keep a conversation going. So, okay, I just explained how it starts conversations. But a lot of things that a prospect will do to try to end the conversation, especially when phone prospecting, is they're going to throw an objection at you. One of the best ways to respond to objections is by asking a question. A prospect says, "Oh, I'm not interested." Well, instead of just trying to talk about your product to make them interested, ask them a question. Oh, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, have you ever been challenged by this? It also makes the conversation more about the prospect. Salespeople can tend to be, very all about them. They have a very product-centric sales pitch. It's, this is the company I work for. This is what we sell. I want to talk to you about this. Well, if you replace that with asking good questions, you make the conversation more about the prospect. And maybe put yourself in a situation where you went to lunch with someone and all they did was talk about themselves, right? And you just sat there. You might be kind of bored. Well, now replace that with going to lunch with someone who asked you a lot of questions about you and about your hobbies and your interests and where you've traveled, and you did a lot of the talking, and they made it all about you. You probably found that to be a more engaging, actually, you probably didn't think about it being engaging because but you probably thought about it being a more delightful conversation. A more interesting conversation is the right word, because what we like talking about in most cases, is the stuff we're interested in. And so make it more about the prospect, and that's what questions will help you to do. I mean, you may agree, okay, yeah, I need to make it more about the other person and not so much about my product. Well, how do I do that? Well, the how is ask questions. Also, you hear this phrase about consultative selling, and I think that even a lot of people that talk about consultative selling don't truly do consultative selling. Like, they might sell a technical product and they say, well, it's a consultative sale, but they still have a product pitch where they talk about the service or product. To really do more consultative selling, it starts with asking good questions. Picture what a consultant does, when they're in an engagement. They're asking questions. So if you want to be a consultative salesperson, which I basically also think there's a lot of real benefits to that, start with asking good questions. If you do all those things that I just kind of went through, you make a good impression. You make it more about the prospect. You have more of a consultative approach. What's going to happen is you're going to end up building more rapport and trust with the prospect. They're less likely to feel like you're a pushy, annoying salesperson, and more feel like you're an advisor and a consultative person that might represent a product that they ultimately want to sell, but they'll feel more comfortable with you. They'll feel like because you're asking questions, they'll feel more trust with you, that if you were to propose something and give them pricing and a proposal, that because you've asked good questions and you haven't really been pushing your product the whole time, that they should be able to trust you as a trusted advisor. And those are some of the reasons why I believe that the best salesperson is the one that asks the best questions. And here's the trick, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, which is you can agree with all that, but you still could be a little lost with saying, okay, I need to ask more questions, but I don't know what questions to ask. And you're absolutely right. It's not that easy just to say, okay, I'm going to ask more questions today, but you just don't say it. You need to have some sort of direction, or some sort of logic with what to ask. And basically, we're going to show you that here today. Here's sort of our agenda for today. We're going to go through the subject of qualifying questions, and we'll talk about pre-qualifying questions. We're going to talk about closing questions, some general meeting kind of opening questions, and then we'll outline when you should ask those different types of questions and how you kind of put all that together. But when we're talking about these, I'm actually going to give you questions here today. 90% of what I show you, maybe even more than that, will be questions that you can use exactly how they are regardless of what you sell. So in each of these sections, I'm going to just basically give you questions, and you can take them and use them exactly. So you can leave this webinar with stuff that you can use today and shift to asking more questions. So the other thing is that if you agree that the best salesperson is the one that asks the best questions, and if you take some of what I give you here today, it's not real hard to make that shift. It's not like you are having to change your personality or totally change how you do things. So that's the good news. So let's just get right in. There's a lot to sort of go through, and we'll start here with qualifying questions. And what basically qualifying questions are is that these are questions that you should ask to determine if the prospect is a good prospect. And I want to just kind of start out with a metaphor here, which is, and it kind of has to do with this image here, that this image is basically sticking a litmus test into a cup of water. And I'm going to get a little technical in this example, but I'm going somewhere with it, so bear with me. But like, you can stick a litmus test in like a glass of water to test the pH level. And I've done a little bit of research on this, and I'll try to communicate this as though you have no knowledge of this. But, and like I said, I'm going to connect all this to selling, which is, the thing is that a reason why you might want to know how much acidity or how high the pH level is in a glass of water is, one reason is you might want to try to be drinking water with a low level of acidity, because maybe you have acid reflux. And if you have acid reflux and you drink water with a high pH, that could trigger your symptoms of acid reflux, right? So one way to decrease issues is to test the water by sticking an indicator in it, and it'll either tell you whether it's low pH or high pH, and then you can make an informed decision if you want to drink that water. Why I'm outlining that metaphor is that what basically happens in the world of sales is that is the equivalent to someone with acid reflux just drinking water without really knowing what's in it in terms of the pH level. And what happens is sometimes they might have symptoms of not feeling well, and sometimes they're fine. And connecting that to selling is that we don't usually test our prospects enough, and we just try to sell to them. And what happens is that we end up selling to prospects that are not good. And there's a reason why we shouldn't do that. And asking qualifying questions is the equivalence of sticking a litmus test in the water. The litmus test in the water says this is how good or bad the water is. The qualifying questions that you ask your prospects will tell you, if you ask the right ones, how good or bad the prospect is. And the reason why you want to do that and why it's really important is because time is limited. There's only so many. If you're a salesperson, you have a quota. You have an annual quota, quarterly quota, monthly quota, weekly quota, daily quota, if you want to break it down. And you only have so many hours in the day and so many hours in the week. So you have to get the most out of this time. So if you are able to minimize the time you spend with bad prospects and maximize the time you spend with good, then you should sell more. And that should be something you agree with, and it's not a revolutionary concept. The problem is that we just try to sell to everybody, and any prospect that'll take an appointment, we go meet with them. And that's not basically, without having information, that's drinking the water without knowing whether it is the type of water you should be drinking. Asking good questions might prevent you from spending time with bad prospects. And it really comes down to opportunity cost. You can only spend your time on the phone with one prospect. You can only present to one prospect. You can only work on one thing at a time. So when you choose to work on one thing, you're taking away from working on another. Let me give you an extreme example. If you receive an RFP that will require you to spend 2 days creating a proposal, and you choose to do that, then you're taking away 2 days from finding leads. And if that proposal, the RFP, is not for a qualified lead, then even knowing you don't have other proposals to respond to, it would be better to spend that 2 days trying to find better quality leads. So it's an opportunity cost. So if you can improve your decision of, I'm going to invest time with this prospect and I'm going to walk away from this prospect, you can make the most out of the time you have. So that's the purpose of qualifying questions. It's one of the purposes. So one purpose is to determine which prospects you should spend your time with. Another purpose is that you can also extract very valuable information from the prospect that you can use throughout the sales process. By the way, the examples that I gave you of my manager asking if I had asked those questions, those were qualifying questions. I'm going to show you those and the others that should surround those here in a minute. But I could just give you a long list of qualifying. These are questions you should ask to qualify. But one way to kind of make it easier for you to digest or easier for you to think about when you're working in real time is to break down areas to look to see if the prospect is qualified. And I've organized them into 4 areas. So does the prospect need to purchase what you have? And I'm going to use another example for us to kind of get our hands around these concepts. Need to purchase. So let's just say we sell cars, right? And it's a Sunday afternoon and we're a salesperson and someone walks onto the dealership. Now, we can spend 2 hours with this prospect driving them around, but there's other prospects walking onto the dealership. So we need to determine, do we invest time with this person that just walked on, or do we kind of answer their questions and make sure they have what they need so that we can keep ourselves available for more qualified prospects? Well, one thing that we can look at with this prospect that's just walking up is, do they need to purchase a car? A good example of that might be, maybe they're interested in having a new car, but maybe the car they use works just fine. So they're maybe just, you've heard the term kicking tires. That's where that comes from. They're just killing time on a Sunday afternoon. So do they need to purchase? And I'll show you some questions that help you to kind of figure that out without really just asking someone, do you need to purchase a car today? Does that person have the authority to purchase? So getting back to purchasing cars, maybe it's a gentleman that walks on the dealership, but maybe it's his wife that is actually the person that's going to say yes, no. So we could have this great conversation with this gentleman, take him on a test drive and get to a price that's right, but maybe at the end of the day, he's not the person who really pulls the strings with the wallet. So he doesn't have the authority to purchase. That's something very important to understand. Does he have the ability to purchase? So maybe he needs a car, he is the decision maker, but maybe he doesn't have a job. Maybe his car's breaking down, so he definitely needs one. He's the one who decides everything, but he doesn't have a source of income, so he's not able to get financing, so he doesn't have the ability to purchase. And this is a key one, which is the intent to purchase. So does he intend, or she intend, to purchase from you? It's not necessarily to make the purchase. It's, do they intend to purchase from you? Let me give you an example. So staying with the car example, this gentleman might check all of the first 3 boxes, right? And then and you might ask questions, and you might think, this is a great guy, I'm going to sell this guy a car. But the reality is that he spent the whole last weekend already shopping for cars, and he just came onto your dealership to do some price comparison, and he already has a relationship because with someone else, and so he intends to purchase, but he has very little intent to purchase from you, which means he's not qualified. And let me connect that to the world of B2B sales. So you might get an RFP from someone, and if you asked them most of these questions in these categories, they would all be great. They need something, they're going to purchase, the decision makers involved, it's funded, okay? But what you might for not find out, which might be the reality, is that they've been working on this project for 3 months, and they've been engaged with your competitor for 3 months, and the competitor actually helped to write the proposal. But if you don't ask the right questions, you might not become aware of that. And you'd think this is a layup, they're doing something that's funded, and you spend 2 weeks putting together a proposal and a presentation. And what you didn't find out is that they were qualified in most areas, but they didn't have the intent to purchase from you. So those are four things. If you want to kind of break it down, that's four things to think about when you're talking to someone. And I'll give you questions for each category. So for the need to purchase, I'll just kind of fly through some of these. We might not have time to discuss every single question, but you can certainly have these and use these after this. These questions are designed to say, is this person kicking tires and killing time while his wife's getting her hair cut around the corner, or does this person just genuinely need what we have to sell? So what motivated you to come in? What brought you to us? What are you doing today in this area? So like relating that to cars, I assume you have a car today. Okay, how old is your car? What if he says my car is 6 months old? Well, in most cases, people don't replace cars that are 6 months old, so that could tell you this guy doesn't really need anything. He's just sort of killing time. What's working well for you today? What's not? Regarding what they're using today. What would it mean to you if you were to make this purchase? So you're trying to identify would things get better? Would things change? Another thing to identify is what happens if they don't make a purchase. So will there be any challenges for you if you don't purchase something in this area, or don't purchase what we're talking about here today? So the thing there is that if things are okay, whether they purchase from you or not, then they might not need it. Like, let's say that someone's using some sort of payroll software, right? And they're talking to you, and you sell like the state-of-the-art payroll system. But their current system is old, but it processes everything. It works okay. They're able to do payroll. They're able to get their reports. So things are okay. I mean, can you improve it? Sure. So if you were to ask them, hey, listen, I mean, you have the system today. What if you just didn't? What if you just kept using that for another 5 years? What does that look like? I mean, are there any problems that come from that? Now, they might tell you, yeah, I mean, the system we use isn't supported. So if something serious happens, we are completely screwed. So that's good. Or they might say, nah, I mean, it's okay. It would be fine. We need to improve. We need to update, change over at some point, but no major problems. Then that's a concern. So those are some other questions. Is there a date you need to purchase by? What happens if you don't purchase by that date? So trying to find a compelling event. What's the time frame that you need to work along? So let's look at the next category, authority to purchase. So we're trying to identify, are you the person who's going to make the call, right? Or is it your wife? So instead of asking someone, are you the person who makes the call? Here are some more diplomatic ways to go about that. What is the decision-making process? That's a great way to kind of figure out, especially if you're selling B2B and you might be selling to someone that has like a manager title, maybe they even have a director level job. But and they have an ego, so you don't want to either challenge their ego by saying, are you the decision maker? But they also actually might think that they are the decision maker, but the reality is that they're not. So ask them what the decision making process is, because certainly they might think, okay, yeah, I'm going to make the decision, but what happens after that? When they make the decision, what happens? Who signs the contract? Or what does it have to go through a committee or whatnot? What parties will be involved in the making of the decision? What functional areas are impacted? Who's the ultimate decision maker? Who's the person that signs the contract? Ability to purchase. So this gets towards funding. So instead of just saying, do you have money to spend? Here are some diplomatic ways to go about that. Is there budget approved for this project? What's the budget range that the project needs to fit in? So that's a great way to kind of feel the person out. Instead of saying, what are you looking to spend, or asking them how much money do you have to spend? Ask them, what's the budget range that you need to stay within? And believe it or not, even though you're kind of basically saying how much money do you have to spend, when you ask it in that way, people just kind of answer it. It's almost like a little Jedi mind trick. You try it out. It's kind of interesting. And people just say, well, the range is 50 to 75,000. They'll just tell you. Whereas if you said, how much money do you have to spend on this, they would say, well, how much depends how much it costs. Have funds been allocated to this? What budget will this purchase be made under? Are there any other purchases impacting this? So moving on, intent to purchase. These are, again, this is that area that it's easy to forget, and here are questions that get to you identifying what the heck's going on here, right? Like, is someone stringing you along, or are they genuinely interested in you? Kind of like in the dating world, I mean, is someone playing you, or do they genuinely want, are they genuinely interested in a relationship with you? So here's some questions, and some of them don't really directly ask, do you intend to purchase from me? But you're likely busy, so why did you take time out of your schedule to meet with us? Do you recall what originally motivated you to reach out to us? What other options are you considering? How far along are you with them? How do you feel about their solution? What do you like about their solution, or what do you don't like? How does their solution compare to us? Is there a reason why you would choose us over them? If you had to make a decision today, which way would you lean? And so those are really good questions, if I do say so myself. Sometimes they won't answer those questions. None of the questions I'm showing you here today are going to offend anyone. Let's go back to the discussion of price or budget, or even authority. A salesperson could think that they're scared to ask, to find out what's going on with that. These are very diplomatic ways of asking these questions. None of these questions should offend anybody. So those are qualifying questions. Those are the litmus tests, to test, is this a good prospect? And if you ask those, then you should have a feeling of, yes, it makes sense for me to spend 2 days on a proposal. Yes, it makes sense for me to fly 3 hours and travel and spend money to go give a presentation. And without asking those questions, if you do any of those things, you're not protecting yourself in terms of how you spend your valuable time. We teach a concept here of pre-qualifying questions. So hopefully you see all those questions that we just went through, and you think, well, yeah, those are great questions to ask. What you may realize is that those are not actually good questions to ask when you first when you're first starting the dialogue with someone. On a cold call, for example, you don't have the time and relationship to ask someone about their budget or their authority. You could ask some of those need questions, but the reality is that when you're on a cold call, or you meet someone at a networking event, or it's just that very beginning of the process, you just want to start the dialogue. Although you still want to qualify them a little bit, you want to establish a conversation, and you might want to qualify them a little bit to even identify if it makes sense to start a conversation. And so what we do is we use a concept of pre-qualifying questions, which were originally called soft qualifying questions. So they're basically kind of very soft versions of the qualifying questions that just determine, does it even make sense for us to talk for to continue talking beyond 5 minutes, right? So very soft questions. They don't really determine, is this lead for real? It's just, if the next step in your process was to schedule an appointment, your pre-qualifying questions could help you to determine, does it make sense for us to even have an appointment for both your time and my time? And so let me give you some examples of those. So you might ask questions that relate to the current environment. Are you using anyone today for blank? So an example there might be, let's stay with the payroll. Are you using anyone today for payroll outsourcing? And let's say that they use an in-house software that they purchased in the past 12 months, right? And they spent a bunch of money on it. So you saw outsourcing as a service, and they just purchased something. And where I'm going with this is that by you asking this very first question, and by hearing an answer like that, you can determine that they're not a fit, at least not right now. They just made a big purchase in the past 12 months. There's no way they're changing anything. They don't even fit with the type of business model you're in. And we could apply that to any other product. Like if you sell a certain type of product and they don't even consume and use what you sell. There is a current environment type of question that you could ask right out of the gate, and depending on the answer, that would tell you whether or not you should walk away immediately. And, if you can identify that you should walk away immediately, and that can prevent you from scheduling an appointment where you either put an hour on your calendar virtually, or you're going to potentially drive across the city and spend time and money going to see them. So current environment questions: are you using anybody today for this? Who are you using? How long have you been with them? How's everything going? What are some things you like about them? These are kind of similar to, these overlap with the need, the need part of the harder qualifying, but they're a little softer, a little kind of probing just to see what's going on. You could try to ask some questions about organizational details. Are you the person responsible for making decisions regarding blank? Do you know who's responsible for? I wouldn't necessarily come out of the gate and ask these. I might ask these just before I maybe schedule an appointment. You might determine that they might have a need, but before you really put that meeting on the calendar, you ask some of these just to make sure that they're in the right role. The main area for the pre-qualifying are questions that probe for pain. And these, I think, will actually be some of your best questions that you can ask. And unfortunately, if you recall at the beginning of the presentation, I said 90% of the questions I show you, you can copy as is, take them from here, use them today. They apply to really any product. So the 10% that you can't copy today is actually these. And the reason why is because these are questions that probe for the pain that you fix. And you fix a different set of pain points than the pain that I fix. I can't give you my list of questions that probe for pain points and you use them because your product solves a totally different set. So these questions have to really be customized and built around what you sell. And so I will show you some examples, but these are kind of used for created around a fictional, let's just say we sold web design, we created websites, right? So here, and the problems that we help to fix by creating websites are your website's not getting any leads, your website doesn't communicate clearly. So those are pain points that you help to fix by making websites look good and work well. So these are questions that probe for the pain points. So these are similar to like if you go to the doctor. If you're not feeling well and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, does it hurt when I press here and they poke you in your stomach? And you say no, that tells the doctor something. And if you say yes, then that tells the doctor something. So these are similar to that. Now, you'll have to create these on your own. And one thing is that I'm giving you a ton of questions here today that you can use immediately. Unfortunately, or if you really subscribe to our methodology, these are actually the questions you'll use most often. Because the hard qualifying questions are the questions that you use sort of later in the process. And it's those, if you're doing prospecting where you're networking and you're on the phone and you're sending emails, these are the questions that you want to be spending more time on. And I'll explain that in more detail at the end when we kind of put it all together, showing you when you should ask which type of questions. But anyways, what I can at least do is give you a process for how to create your questions to probe for pain points that you could work through on your own. So step one is just sort of outline the product that you sell. And so I told you here, web design services. You might want to outline the features that product offers, so what that product basically does. And then for each of those features, you can stop to think about how does that help the person I'm selling to from a benefit or value standpoint. And then you might brainstorm a set of benefits. Now, if you take your set of benefits, each benefit can help you to brainstorm and think about maybe a problem that you help to fix. So if you help to improve conversion rates for a website, well, a problem that maybe small business owners have is that they're not getting enough leads through their website. So you can look at the benefit and then correlate that with, it's kind of the opposite. Think about what the opposite of the benefit is. So if the benefit is improved conversion rate, then the problem is that the conversion rate for a lot of websites out there isn't what it needs to be. So that can help you get to a list of pain points. And remember, these are the questions that probe to see if someone has the pain point that we can help to fix. We're pushing the finger in the stomach and saying, does it hurt when I push here? So if we have the list of pain points, then for each pain point could be one, you could really probably create 2 or 3 questions for each pain point. But if we just kind of keep it simple with one, each benefit has a pain point, and each pain point has a benefit, has a question that could be asked. This is where you can brainstorm the questions for the pain that you resolve, and using that process can help you to get to just a really powerful list of probing questions. When you really start to get sophisticated, that list of questions can be different when you change from one buyer to another. Let's say that you sell some sort of technology product, and you can sell to the CFO, and you can also sell to the CIO. Those could be 2 totally different sets of pain points. Maybe the CIO is worried about system failure and risk and whatnot, and the CFO is worried about cost and operational costs. And so your questions could be totally different. You don't have to get there right out of the gate, but that's just when you want to really get sophisticated with asking good questions. So that's the pre-qualifying questions. Now, closing questions, I'll give you some options for that. I think that if we were to play like Family Feud, where we've surveyed 100 people, 100 salespeople, and we said, what's the one sales skill that you'd like to improve the most? I would guess that the number one sales skill would be to be a better closer. Like that would be the number one that would flip up, to close better. And I think that first of all, if you do what I just showed you already, like qualifying, you doing the litmus test on prospects, your closing is going to be a lot easier, because you're going to weed out a lot of the time wasters, and it's the time wasters that you're at the end of this, you've forecasted the deal to management, and management's telling you to go make it happen and go close the deal, and you're having trouble selling the deal. By qualifying, you're going to get rid of those, so the deals that you do try to close will close easier. But you can still ask some questions, and some questions that you can ask are trial closing questions, which are just checking to see what's going on in the prospect's head. It's like a test close. What do you think about what we've discussed so far? How would what I showed you, how would that help you guys, help your operation? Is this something you could see yourself using? Are we heading in the right direction with what we're talking about here? Does this agenda match up with what you see? So these aren't necessarily saying, are you ready to go to the next step? Is this something you want to purchase? These are checking in to see whether or not you're progressing towards a close. Soft closing questions, this is basically you're trying to close, but you're letting the prospect determine what to do or tell you what they want to do. So what would you like to do next? What direction do you want to go from here? Do you want to continue talking about this? Would you like to talk again and continue this discussion? And now hard closing, here's some hard closing options. Are you ready to move to the next step of the process? What would you need to be able to make a commitment to move forward? So that's a good question to ask. The prospect's saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure. Well, what do you need changed? Is it the price that is preventing you? Is there a feature that you need? What do you need to be able to make a commitment? And then if the prospect basically isn't necessarily getting everything they ask for, a good question to ask is to say, well, let me ask you this. If you had everything you wanted, the features, the price, everything, are you saying that you would be able to take that step forward? So that's having the answer to that is a good answer to have. If we were able to give you everything you're asking for, would you be able to move forward? When are you going to make your final decision? If they're delaying you, if they're pushing you off, hey, call me back we're gonna hold off for 3 months. Okay, do you mind if I ask if there's a change or something different that will be going on in 3 months that will make that a better time for you to purchase? You're not able to do it now, and you think that you might be able to do it better. Do it then. Is there anything that's preventing you from being able to move forward with this purchase? So some hard closing questions. Now I want to share with you just some general meeting questions. These are not revolutionary. Let these questions maybe give you some ideas of things you could say when you're meeting with people. So here's some meeting starter questions. Just bear in mind, I think that a lot of people, when they start out a meeting, they maybe there's 2 errors that could be made. I think one is they jump straight to business too quickly and just needed like a little buffer in there. They're all business and always closing and always selling. The other thing is, I think sometimes people jump to be too personal in an attempt to try to build rapport. An example of that might be like seeing a picture on the desk of from spring break or vacation and starting a conversation about that that's using valuable time when they don't want to really talk about their trip to Mexico with a complete stranger. Here are some other thoughts to consider to try to avoid those two things. So, how's your day going so far? I like asking that when you're kind of like maybe in the elevator, like they've come down to get you and you're in their office building and you're walking from the elevator to their office. Instead of like having awkward silence or talking about business. How's your day going so far? A question I love asking, which is somewhat like making it about them and building rapport, but it's also giving you valuable information, is how long have you been working here? I mean, that's a great question that's showing, hey, I'm interested in you and I want to build a relationship with you and I want to learn about you. But at the same time, it gives you valuable information. I mean, maybe whether they're brand new, if they're brand new or if they've been there for 20 years, those are good things to know. What did you do before? Again, same thing. It's good info to know. Here's a great question I like asking, uh, and so once it's about time to get to business, I like kind of opening up with this, which is, I know why I wanted to meet with you. Is there anything that motivated you to want to meet with me? Because the reason why I want to meet with them is I want to maybe start a business relationship, maybe sell them something, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. But why did they want to meet with me? Did they want to meet with me just because I called them a bunch? Or and sometimes when you ask that, they'll start talking and you'll find out that there's something going on and that's what motivated them to meet with you. Is there anything particular you were hoping to get out of this time together? And then, if you share that what you plan to do in the meeting, does that match up with your expectations? So that's a good question to ask just to make sure you're on the same page. How much time do you want to spend together today? So kind of, you maybe have put an hour on their calendar, but maybe they only want to spend 30 minutes with you. So knowing that up front, knowing if if there's a hard stop, so you can manage how fast you go, how much detail you go into, or how you manage the meeting. A lot of those same concepts can apply. Sometimes you might be meeting with people that are more networking situations. It's not a pure, you're a salesperson, they're a prospect. So how's your day going so far? Tell me more about what you do. How long have you been doing that? What did you do before? What do you like most about what you do? Is there something that motivated you to get into that type of work? Where are you from? How can I help you to be successful? What does a good prospect look like for you? So those are some just general questions. Take any of those that you like. We've outlined all these questions. How do those all fit together from a sales process standpoint? So the way I like to sort of simplify the early part of a sales process is sort of you have that initial contact. That could be a cold call, it could be an email, it could be meeting someone at an event. Then step 2 might be some sort of appointment, meeting, a longer conversation. That could happen at the same time as the first time you talk to someone, but sometimes you set it as an appointment. And then maybe a third step, which might be some sort of presentation, more of a deeper conversation. Could be a demonstration, could be a delivery of a proposal. But those are just some simple steps that I try to build around. So now let's look at what in that first step. You don't want to ask any of your real harder qualifying questions. You want to stay to your pre-qualifying questions. So that's like, what's going on with you guys? Have you ever had any concerns about this? Pain point. Have you had any concerns about that? Pain point. Are you the right person to talk to regarding this? And so you're asking your pre-qualifying questions. You might meet someone. You might be asking at an event. You might ask your networking questions. At all of these steps, you can ask your different closing questions. And the key thing here is yes, it's always be closing. I agree with always be closing. What I don't agree with is always be closing the sale of the product. If you're at the first step, your close is not to sell the product. Your close is to get to the second step. So if your next step is an appointment, your close is trying to set that appointment. Hey, well, it sounds like you have some of the challenges that we help with. I'd like to ask you some more questions and share some information how we've helped to fix those challenges. are you available for a 15 to 20-minute call on Thursday afternoon? So that's me not closing for the product, me closing for the next step. In the meeting or appointment, or when you're talking in a deeper, longer, bigger conversation, you can do more, you can ask more questions. So this is where you might start out with some of those meeting starter questions, networking questions. I have pre-qualifying questions again because you may have like 10 really good pre-qualifying questions that you might ask, that you might have for what you sell, and certainly you're not going to ask all 10 in the first step. So you might take a step back and work through your pre-qualifying questions again at step 2. And then this is where you can get into those hard qualifying questions, which is, hey, tell me about the decision-making process. I mean, if we were to kind of continue through this, what does that look like? Are you, and you can ask about budget. If this was something you guys would pursue, what's the budget range? So you might ask discovery questions, which is a topic that I haven't included in here because that's really specific for your product. Discovery questions might be like, how many employees do you have? How many sites do you have? That's specific to selling your product. This is where you might start to ask those. And then in the third step, you might continue with a lot of those same questions and closing questions at each of those steps. So that's kind of how you can organize those questions. I guess probably the real takeaway there is that early on, you don't really want to ask your hard qualifying questions, and you don't need to, because you're really just trying to validate that it makes sense to continue talking. And that's what your pre-qualifying questions are kind of designed to do. Does it make sense for us just to even continue this conversation? I mean, you don't have to say those exact words in terms of does it make sense to continue this conversation, but that's what those pre-qualifying questions do. And then as you work through the sales process is when you start to add in more harder, deeper questions, qualifying, discovery, different closing questions and whatnot. Let me show you something in SalesScripter, because you can take all those questions and you can download those slides and use those questions today. I wanted to just show you a couple things real quick. I did tell you that the pre-qualifying questions you're going to have to develop on your own, and so SalesScripter will take you through a process, and you see here benefits and pain points and questions. So SalesScripter will take you through a structured process where you can organize those thoughts and build all those questions. And then once you're there, then the software will then build out lists of questions for you. So you can see here pre-qualifying questions, hard qualifying questions, networking questions, and so all of these are documents that you can, let me just show you what one of these looks like. So documents that list out your questions. So certainly you can copy a lot of those from the slides and from this presentation, but SalesScripter does provide a place for you to organize your thoughts and then the documents as well. But one thing that is really powerful with asking good questions, and now I'm skipping ahead in SalesScripter to our CRM, one of the key things about asking good questions is what you do with the answers, right? I mean, I would say probably 3/4 of the process is asking the good questions, but about 25% is documenting and using the information that you get, the answer you get, right? And so we've made this tool, and it's actually called a prospect qualifier, and you have these different tabs here, and you'll notice these tabs align with basically those categories that I went through here today with you. And basically this tool, you can attach basically a contact, from the CRM. So the way to use this is that maybe you are on a call with someone and you have your questions up here. You ask them some questions, or in a meeting you make some notes on your spiral tab, whatever. That is what would be most efficient. You can make some notes. And then after your meeting, you come here and you log what you did with that person, and here are all your questions, and you have an answer box for each question. And so you can easily just type out your answers real quick. And when it gets logged as an activity for that contact, it'll document the question, so you can shorthand these really easily, because you don't have to basically rephrase the full answer. You can just answer what will make sense when it's paired with the question. We also score your contacts from a quality standpoint. So you see here you can actually add points or take points away for their answers. So you can actually start to get a quality score from the meetings that you're having and the conversations you're having, and document that. So that's what we call Prospect Qualifier, which is basically a tool. It's self-explanatory. It's a tool that displays your qualifying questions and allows you to score and qualify your prospects from a quality standpoint. And then when you view your contacts as a whole, you're able to see who's most qualified and who's not. So just want to show you that real quick. If we've helped you in any way. I know that there's a lot of people that will watch this and will be helped, and they won't buy anything from us, and that's fine. A small percentage of those people end up purchasing from us. I know that there's a lot of salespeople, businesses out there that use our training and never purchase anything from us and maybe never plan to. What I would ask is an exchange here. If we have helped you in any way, if you could help us, and an easy way for you to help us is to simply like this video, comment on it, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Anyways, so a little bit more about SalesScripter. We provide what I call the Smart Sales System, and it stands for sales messaging. It actually stands for sales messaging and response tactics. This whole concept, all this passion goes back to the anecdote that I shared with you, which was I was trying to sell and I wasn't asking the right questions, and I would go to my manager and then he would tell me after I got off the call what question I should have asked. Well, why not know the questions ahead of time? Why not stop selling and organize your thoughts to develop the right questions and right objection responses so you don't have to learn through trial and error? Or if you're training someone, hiring someone new. So that's a passion of mine, and it goes all the way back in my career, and that's what this whole system is designed to do. The system's broken into 3 areas. Sales methodology, which is you're basically getting exposed to the methodology today. Our methodology is on YouTube. So it's actually on a playlist called Smart Sales System Training Program. You could do a search for that, and you'll see all of these videos for our full methodology. This is the type of stuff that other companies will charge you thousands of dollars for you to have access to. We give it away for free. And the reason why we give it away for free, and we also give it away through our ebooks, we give it away because we want you to subscribe to our software, and I'll talk about that in a second, and I don't hide that. But here are ebooks you can get through our website. If you aren't on our ebook list, I will probably be adding the registration list from this webinar to our ebook email list. And what basically happens is you'll get all 6 of these ebooks in an email, so you can access all of them in one email. And then every 2 or 3 days, you'll get a sales tip from us. So if you aren't already on that, be on the lookout for that. And if you don't want those, you can just click unsubscribe at the bottom. And we provide training through YouTube. We also sell it as a service, so you can hire us to do training, custom training, or in-person training, virtual, whatnot. But the reason why I give so much of our training away is because our business model is to get more subscribers to our software. And it's not that I'm trying to trick you, into like signing up to something you don't need. In fact, I give you so much through the training that it's like the logic is if you watch all of our training and you want to follow it exactly, you could do it and not spend any money, but you might as well sign up for our software, because the software is going to create everything for you, give you all these tools around everything you just learned. So if you love that, then you're going to get your money's worth, and the software is going to be what you want. So I'm not trying to trick you into buying anything, but our business model is basically, to get subscribers. And so that's how we make money and how we grow. But the software platform is basically, a lot of our training focuses around cold calling, having a good pitch, asking good questions, objection responses, having a good script. And so the software basically will help you to build your pitch. It'll give you a library of scripts and emails and templates. It has CRM functionality, email delivery, and email automation. And then we also, the third leg of our 3-legged stool is professional services. So we provide consulting as well as coaching. Anyways, the logic that I sort of apply with this is that if you if you create clarity for yourself around what to say and what to do, or for your salespeople, you're going to be smart. If you say the right thing and ask the right question, basically you're going to be a smarter salesperson. And by asking good questions, I already talked about this. By asking good questions to your prospect, you're going to look smart. So a trick here is that if you're hiring salespeople or if you're brand new on a job, if you want to fake it till you make it, just ask good questions. I mean, you could be totally clueless on how what you sell works, but if you ask good questions, you're going to appear smart. But if you do ask good questions, and by appearing smart, you're you're going to make a good impression with the prospect, so that might build rapport and trust like I talked about. But by asking good questions, you're going to basically have more information. And this is going to help you to determine which prospects to sell to and which ones to walk away from, and help you to manage your time better. And it's actually going to make you get the most out of every week and every day, which will help you to sell more. Not only will you sell more, but because you know what to say and ask and how to respond in different situations, you'll actually have less anxiety around making calls and around selling, and you'll enjoy your job more. So certainly sales can be tough if you're not selling anything and you're getting shot down all the time. I'll use a sports metaphor. Picture a football team and a quarterback who the team isn't trained right. They don't have a good playbook. They haven't practiced, and the quarterback is getting knocked down and beat up, right? That's not a lot of fun. But if you replace that with a team, maybe, I'm not a big fan. Well, I'm not a big fan, but they're a good example, like the New England Patriots, who just play well every year, and Tom Brady. If you play like that, where the team is very well trained, very good playbook, well practiced, well prepared, and they're not getting beat up, it's just fun. And so you can make selling fun, where you're making more money, you're getting promoted, your job's easier, you're not having to work as hard. Anyway, so the pricing for the software is basically $49 a month per user per month. You get a 40% discount if you sign up for the year. Sales training, you can access all of it for free on YouTube. I do provide a service called a Scripter Walkthrough, which is 2 hours with me personally for only $200, and it's basically I go through and create your sales pitch with you inside of Sales Scripter. I could easily charge $500 to $1,000 for that 2-hour engagement because it's so productive and for what you get. And the reason why it's only $200 is because, again, our business model is for you to be a subscriber. So I'll work hard to get you to have a good sales pitch and hope that you use Sales Scripter for the year and that you refer other people to Sales Scripter. And maybe you are a manager and you could maybe use Sales Scripter for all of your salespeople. So the $200 is almost like below cost. It's just so that I don't spend 2 hours with every person that wants to spend 2 hours with me. But it's a great value, and if you kind of look at it as though you want to build your pitch for $200 plus $49 for 1 month, you basically would get 2 hours with me. You'd get a full library of documents, and the software you can do month to month. So you could just purchase it for 1 month and then cancel. So for $250, you're going to get 2 hours with me, and you're going to get a whole library of documents. So I'm pretty confident that that would be worth your money. If you were to go to the bookstore and go to the business section and then look at the shelf for sales, and there was a book that had a library of scripts and emails and responses for your product, and it was $250, you would grab that book and run to the register, making sure someone else didn't take it. So that's kind of the same thing here. But anyways, we also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you want to check out the software for $49, get in there, and if you're not happy for any reason, let us know, and we'll give you a full refund inside of 30 days. Here's my info. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to contact me directly, and let me see if there's any questions.